You first.
I really couldn't hear it. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I'll tell you.
He
said, what about subjective experience? If someone says, I had a religious experience and I went on to do a noble action, shouldn't we credit that to religion? Would that be a fair précis of your question, sir? He says yes. I have an answer, but I'm sure you do too.
I suppose so. It doesn't seem to present any difficulties to my position, so I think I'll hand it over to him.
Well, I mean, one of the best books for the unbeliever to read is William James's Varieties of Religious Experience, which is, by the way, is a trope you come up against a lot with C.S. Lewis, many other religious writers. They say, you who believe in the material world and don't believe in the supernatural, you can't account for the experiences of revelation and enlightenment and miracles that other people experience. And you don't understand the numinous, in other words. And I say that that's true for me. I don't. And I don't trust them. Though I do think they can be confused with experiences of nature, landscape, music, sex and love, the numinous in other ways. But if these experiences, the positive ones, are going to be credited to the religion account, then so must the person who says that God told him to go and get a gun and kill all the unveiled girls in the Adrian streets. If all these things are going to be charged, they've all got to be charged. And that would leave us exactly where the argument from design leaves us, and all the others leave it, where we started. Ça va?
If I could just respond very briefly to that, I don't think that's true. I think a lot of time is wasted in this argument by atheists blaming Christians for all the horrors and oppressions that have taken place in history, and Christians returning, oh no, it was only done by atheists. It's quite plain that human beings are always capable of enormous wickedness. And the misunderstanding and misapprehension of religion is incredibly dangerous. And I think that the idea that either side is faultless in this is absurd and indefensible. But I would very strongly argue that far more good has been done by religious belief than harm. And that great harm is likely to be done to our civilization by an abandonment of religious belief.
Sir, our next question.
Hi. I was just at a philosophical luncheon at the University of Chicago where they teach your brand of atheism and morality in their theology school. But they were congratulating Chicago alderman on his life. And one of the things that they cheered was that he had spent several months with Trotsky in Mexico in 1928. They thought this was really great. And that a group of atheists would cheer a man who killed between 40 and 60 million people, and having spent, I would now do it, having spent months with him, and this is something they look up to. And this is the top of the people who do this. The Chinese, who were atheists, killed, 100 to 200 million people? They did 90 million people in locking up 2 provinces in the north, and they preached atheism. And Trotsky went and preached atheism across Russia, and then he hung priests from the back of the train. To say that atheism will kill without any limit if it gets into power anywhere. This has been proved from one end of the world to another. After Ethiopia, this is your thing. Atheism will kill. There is no defense.
Sir, we need a. Excuse me, sir. Sir, we need a question, please.
No, he's got made a perfectly good question.
How can you defend atheism? I mean, how can you say that atheism won't kill? I mean, if you bring atheism back in a government, it will kill as many people.
No, the question, by the way, I thought it was a perfectly well-phrased question. To be an atheist doesn't guarantee you against being a sadist or a nihilist or a fascist or a Stalinist or a Maoist, though it's slightly unlikely, I think, you'd be a fascist or a National Socialist, but it's I would say, a necessary condition for enlightenment, not a sufficient one. And I'll take your question seriously in the following way. The 20th century totalitarianisms that are accused of being secular, I'll say something about each of them. It was a long question, so I hope you'll allow me. I'll try and condense it. To start with the original 20th century totalitarian ideology, which originally called itself fascism, if in any account you read of fascism, historical account you read, from its origins in Italy, through Spain, Portugal, Croatia, Hungary, Slovakia, etc. If you take out the word fascist and put Catholic right wing, it's the same story. There's no difference. And if you add parties in political alliance with the Vatican, it's the same. All of them. Fascism is another word for the Christian Catholic right wing. In Slovakia, the actual head of the fascist dictatorship was a priest, Father Tiso. In almost every case, the regime was in holy orders and or with the direct alliance with the Pope himself. That's a simple matter. Anyone can check it out. I'm not going to assert it now. I would just say fact-checking and I would be as one on this point. Now, that's not completely true with National Socialism. It's true of the Nazi Party in Austria and Bavaria in its heartlands that it begins blessed by the Vatican, by a concordat with the Church, by the Protestant churches also. But it's not true to say it's a Christian movement in quite the same way. It's a pagan movement to some extent. My favorite example is this, I suppose. Joseph Goebbels was expelled from the Catholic Church. He was. He was the only Nazi who was. Why was he expelled? For marrying a divorced Protestant. Magda Goebbels. You see, the Church does have its standards. However, it is estimated by Paul Johnson, Catholic historian, that more than 40% of the Waffen-SS were practicing, confessing Catholics. No one was ever excommunicated or threatened with excommunication for taking part in the final solution. And that was because of the alliance between the Nazi Party and the Church on two main things, anti-Bolshevism and anti-Semitism. Again, I'm condensing a bit. Now it brings me to the Stalinists. Okay, you're Joseph Stalin. You've taken over Russia. You've been educated in a seminary in Georgia, by the way. Up till 1917, for hundreds of years, hundreds of millions of Russians have been told that the head of the state is a god. That the Tsar is above power, ordinary secular power, that he's the head of the Russian Orthodox Church as well as the... You shouldn't be in the dictatorship business if you can't take advantage of a deep well of credulity and servility like that. It's your golden opportunity. What does he do? Heresy trials. Heresy trials, witch hunts. Miraculous discoveries such as Lysenko's biology. The worship of the leader from whom all blessings flow. As I described North Korea, the most religious state I've ever seen. Mutatis mutandis, this would apply also to Mao's China, with the same background of superstition and servility. Now, for there to be a fair test about this, you'd have to do the following. And no one I've ever debated with has even tried it, so you be the first. You find me a state or a society that threw off theocracy and threw off religion and said we adopt the teachings of Lucretius and Democritus and Galileo and Spinoza and Darwin and Russell and Jefferson and Thomas Paine. And we make those what we teach our children. We make that scientific and rational humanism our teaching. And you find me that state that did that and fell into tyranny and slavery and famine and torture, and then we'll be on a level playing field. As it is, all you've done is show that the idea of worship and the idea of credulity and the idea of servility and slavery to religion is a bad idea in the first place.
But none of the czars and none of the Chinese kings, none of the...
By the way, the Russian Orthodox Church always stayed with Stalin? Always stayed with Stalin?